What if I told you most lies aren't hidden in words, they leak through psychology? See, human beings lie. Not always maliciously, not always intentionally, but consistently. And here's the psychological truth. Your brain is designed to believe people by default. This is known in psychology as the truth default state, where we automatically assume honesty unless there's strong evidence suggesting otherwise. This is exactly why deception is so effective. It's not because liars are geniuses, but because our minds are wired to trust first and question later. Now, listen carefully. There is no single magical sign that proves someone is lying. Not eye movement, not body language, not nervousness. Even the world's leading deception researchers emphasize that no single cue guarantees a lie. Only clusters of psychological signals matter. Today, I'm going to teach you 6 scientifically grounded psychological strategies to detect deception instantly. Not by guessing, but by observing the mind under pressure. Let's start with lesson 1. Watch for baseline breaks. This is the psychological shift. The first and most powerful strategy is to detect deviation from someone's baseline behavior. Every person has a psychological normal mode. Their natural speaking speed, their eye contact pattern, their emotional rhythm. When deception occurs, the brain experiences cognitive load. Lying requires mental fabrication, emotional control, and memory management all at the same time. This overload often causes behavioral shifts. A normally talkative person becomes unusually quiet. A calm speaker suddenly becomes overly detailed. A confident individual begins hesitating. Psychologists call these moments hot spots, behavioral deviations that signal internal stress or concealed information. Here's an important psychological insight. You are not detecting the lie. You are detecting the brain struggling to maintain it, and that distinction changes everything. Moving on to lesson 2. Look for emotional leakage or micro-emotional conflict. During deception, the human face sends 2 messages. The emotion a person wants to show and the emotion they are trying to hide. These hidden emotions sometimes leak as micro-expressions, brief, involuntary facial signals lasting less than a second. For example, you might see a flash of fear during a confident statement, a quick smirk during a serious denial, or tight lips while someone says, "I'm fine." But here is the professional truth most people misunderstand. Micro-expressions do not prove lying. They only indicate emotional conflict. Research shows that emotions like fear or guilt can appear even when someone is telling the truth but feels under pressure. So the real strategy is not to spot a facial twitch and make an accusation. The real strategy is to notice the emotional inconsistency and investigate further. That is psychological intelligence. Now let's talk about lesson 3. Exploit the cognitive load. Lying is mentally exhausting. It requires creating a false narrative, remembering all the fake details, managing your emotions and monitoring the other person's reaction. It's like juggling 5 balls at once. A truthful person, on the other hand, is just recalling a memory, which is a much simpler process. So, how do you use this? You increase the cognitive load on the potential liar. Ask them to tell their story in reverse chronological order. This is incredibly difficult for someone fabricating a story because their narrative isn't built on a real sequence of events. They have to mentally rewind the script they just created, which is much harder than simply recalling memories backward. Or try asking unexpected, irrelevant questions. This interrupts their rehearsed narrative and forces them to think on their feet, often revealing inconsistencies when they return to their story. A truthful person can easily switch between topics and then pick their memory back up, but a liar's constructed reality is fragile and can crumble under this kind of mental pressure. Lesson 4 is to pay attention to verb tense and pronoun usage. This is a subtle but powerful clue found in language. When people are being truthful, they tend to use the past tense and first-person pronouns like I and we. For example, I went to the store and then I saw my friend. This language is direct and personal because it reflects a real, lived experience. However, when people are being deceptive, they often unconsciously distance themselves from the lie. You might notice a shift to the present tense, as if they are creating the story as they speak. Or they might avoid using I and instead use more general or passive language. For example, instead of I didn't take the money, they might say, the money wasn't taken, or "That's not what happened." This linguistic distancing is a subconscious attempt to separate themselves from the deceptive act. It's a tiny crack in their psychological armor. Lesson 5. Observe overcompensation and theatricality. Liars often feel they need to sell their story. They worry that their lie isn't convincing enough, so they overcompensate. This can manifest as excessive detail. They might provide a long, overly specific alibi for a simple question, packed with unnecessary information they think will make their story sound more real. Ironically, truthful people often have hazy memories and don't remember every single tiny detail. Another form of overcompensation is emotional theatricality. Their reactions might seem too big or too rehearsed for the situation. For instance, displaying extreme outrage at a simple question or showing exaggerated sadness. Genuine emotions have a natural flow and intensity, while feigned emotions often feel forced, like a bad actor on a stage. They are performing honesty instead of simply being honest. When you see someone trying too hard to be believed, that's a signal to pay closer attention. Finally, Lesson 6. The power of the pause. Silence can be one of your most effective tools. After someone answers a key question, especially one you suspect might be deceptive, just hold your eye contact and remain silent for a few seconds longer than is socially comfortable. This creates a psychological vacuum. A truthful person, having said their piece, will usually be comfortable with the silence. They have nothing more to add because they've told you what happened. A deceptive person, however, will often feel an overwhelming urge to fill that silence. They will feel exposed and anxious, worrying that you don't believe them. So they'll start talking again, often adding more unnecessary details, clarifying points nobody asked about, or even changing parts of their story. In that moment of discomfort, they reveal more than they intend to. They are essentially trying to talk their way out of a trap that you set with nothing but silence. So, to recap, you're not looking for a single giveaway. You are looking for a pattern, a break from their normal behavior, a conflict between their words and emotions, the strain of cognitive overload, distancing language, over-the-top performances, and an inability to handle silence. By using these 6 psychological strategies, you're not just guessing. You're reading the subtle signals the mind sends when it's under the pressure of deception. Thanks for watching. If you found this valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights into human psychology. See you next time.